On today's menu at the Glow Diner, let yourself be bored. Boredom is directly linked to creativity. Making your phone less interesting is often not enough. You need to make life outside of your phone more interesting. Hello, Glow regulars, and if you're new here, welcome to the Glow Diner. My name is Virginia. I'll be your host, waitress, and cook for this episode, and today's special is all about the all-you-can-scroll buffet, aka screen time and phone addiction. We have a combo episode today, which means that all of the information, advice, tips that I share in this episode are backed up by science. I do usually explicitly state the study that I'm referring to throughout the episode, but if you're interested in reading the actual study or just finding out more information about the subject, all of the links are going to be in the show notes for you to be able to access the articles and all other publications. All right, so let me serve you today's special. I really wanted to make an episode around screen time, phone addiction, because I feel it is something that a lot of girlies from my generation are falling victims to. And that's including myself, especially with the pandemic that hit. I think we really normalized spending so much time on our phones because there was really nothing else that we could do during quarantine. And I think it's unfortunately become a habit. I know for myself, there was a really big chunk of time where if I was to go on my phone and use a screen time app and see how much time I was actually spending on my phone and on different apps, I would be so incredibly embarrassed to look at these numbers. And I think we're also just not letting ourselves be bored anymore. Like if we're waiting in line for something or on public transport or anything, it's so easy to just pick up our phone and start scrolling on social media so that we're not just standing there doing nothing. And I know I'm really bad with this, so I wanted to work on this episode and try to find out more information on what would actually work or not work for me to stop using my phone so much. I think one of the biggest problems right now is that phones can be used for literally everything. So it's really easy to justify why we're using our phone, and we're convinced that always being available and connecting with people online will leave us more satisfied in the long run. But overusing is actually doing the exact opposite and leads to us feeling isolated more than anything else. And there are actually an endless number of studies about this. So I'm just going to refer to one from Jean Twenge from 2018, finding that the more time we spend on screens, the more likely we are to report symptoms of depression. This was mostly linked from anxiety and just self-isolation of spending more time on our phone instead of being present in the moment. And I think there's really is a lot to say about social media itself, the content from other people and how they affect us, but also our relationship with our own content and what we decide to post and why. But this will be a subject for a whole other episode because, like I said, there are so many things that I want to talk about more specifically around social media, both around posting and consuming content and how it affects our mental health. So we will keep that for another episode. But we know that screen time heavily affects our mental health, but turns out it also affects our physical health, more specifically our sleep. I feel like we all know that we shouldn't be using our phone before bed, but I think it's also one of the best times to just kind of like sit in bed, relax horizontally, and just be scrolling on social media. But there is a Harvard Medical School study that researched blue light and its effect on our sleep. And it showed that it directly suppresses melatonin, delays sleep onset, and reduces sleep quality. And another 2016 study actually did agree with all these findings, showing that phone use at bedtime is linked to poor sleep and increased fatigue. So, although it is satisfying to just be laying in bed and scrolling on social media or playing games on our phone, we officially know that it is really bad for us. And I think I'm not sharing this because I think that this is revolutionary. Ooh, that was a hard word for me. Sorry. I'm not sharing this because I think it's revolutionary. Oh my gosh, I should have just left it at one. Anyway, I'm not sharing this because I think that you've never heard it before. I'm sharing this because I think it's really important to stress why exactly we want to reduce our screen time. And sleep is probably one of the most important things to focus on if you're trying to better yourself. Cue an episode coming about sleep. But yeah, The good news is that there is then a later study from 2018, and it was an experimental study that showed that limiting use to 30 minutes a day led to reduced loneliness and reduced depression. So there definitely are benefits to reducing your screen time. And I wanted to share a bit of a story. This is not something that I've noticed from research specifically, but it's really more from my own experience. I find myself spending a lot more money the more time I spend on social media. And I honestly think that's not just because, obviously, almost every post now is an ad, and it's not always disclosed as an ad, but most things that we see on social media today are some sort of ad. And sometimes it's even just like you'll be watching a morning routine from a girlie showing her very aesthetic kitchen, and then she pulls out the cutest coffee cup you've ever seen. Next thing you know, it's in your cart because you need to have that coffee cup because it's so cute. But the truth is, 5 minutes ago, before you saw that video, you did not need that coffee cup. You didn't even know it existed. It's very different if you know that there's something that you need to buy and then you go online to look at reviews or the way people feel about certain products to kind of figure out which one will work best for you, versus if you're just scrolling on social media and then randomly just have a new need created because you've seen it somewhere. And I think that's where the problem was for me. There is a really cool Canadian financial wellness girlie. Her name is Asia, and I've been following her forever. But she posted something a few weeks back, and I can't remember the exact post, but I remember it being something like, you don't need a new workout set. You just spend too much time on social media. You don't need to travel to a new country every month. You just spent too much time on social media. And if I can find the exact post, I'll link it in the show notes with the other studies, because I remember watching that video and being like, holy shakes, she is so right. But anyway, she's kind of my dream first guest to have on this podcast because she is so cool and talks a lot about financial wellness, which is something I'm really trying to learn about right now. And I really, really want to share about on the podcast. So I don't know, Asia, if you happen to be listening to this, let me know, girl. Anyway, all of this to say, I think we all know that there are bad sides to using our phones so much and looking at a screen so often throughout our day. And I think it's definitely hard for some of us, including myself, to actually break that habit. And that is because phones are meant to be really addicting. Social media is meant to be very addictive because we're talking about variable rewards. So likes, notifications, but also just scrolling through a feed. You're going to see a lot of videos that are not necessarily interesting to you, or some notifications that you don't necessarily care about. But once in a while, there will be that one TikTok video that you really enjoy, or that one notification that you actually care so much about that you're going to pick up your phone and look at it right away. That's exactly how slot machines work. Like not having you win every turn, but because you know there's a chance that you're going to win once in a while, you just keep playing. That's kind of what social media is doing. And a core concept is that those one times that it actually feels rewarding to be using social media, you have that chemical reward of dopamine being released in your brain. And that's what keeps you going for more. That's what creates a habit, like we talked about in the very first combo episode of The Glow Diner. Now, I think there are a lot of tips that are shared online about how to use your phone less. And there's 2 of them that I'm completely convinced do not work at all. The first one is to put your phone on grayscale. I don't think that does anything. I think you're still going to use your phone. There used to be a time where there was only black and white TV and people were still watching shows. Now your phone addiction is just sad and gray. The other one is the infamous social media cleanse. Especially if you feel the need to announce it online that you're not going to be on social media for a while. I think we've got it all wrong, bestie. Because then when you come back even stronger. But seriously, this has been shown to not really help at all. It's better to do something that you're going to be able to control on the day-to-day versus just not going on social media for a certain amount of time and then going right back into it without any sort of system, rules, or change. And that's another thing. Just telling yourself that you're going to use your phone less is really not going to do much unless you're willing to put up systems to actually make that change happen. And that's where we're going to go into the tips that I actually do think work and that are backed up by behavioral science. We know about the habit loop from behavioral science, and the whole idea is to reduce the friction for good habits, so making good habits easier, and then increase the friction for bad ones, so making bad habits harder to go through. And this is from James Clear, the author of the book Atomic Habits, which we did go quite in depth with in the first combo episode of the Glow Diner. So the very first tip, which is personally my favorite one, and I do it is to completely turn off all notifications on your phone, except for like texts and calls, so that if ever there's an emergency or something, people can still reach you. But all other notifications are really not essential to have. So let's say you're doing something, working on a project, studying, cleaning, really doesn't matter. Let's say you're doing something important and all of a sudden you get a notification, you pick up your phone, look at a notification, even if it's unimportant. There is a study from 2008 that showed that after an interruption, it takes on an average 23 minutes to fully refocus on a task that you were doing before that interruption. Isn't that kind of crazy? I think there's a way that you can go into settings on your phone and see how many notifications you've received in a day, or kind of like an average of how many notifications you receive in a day. Can you imagine losing 23 minutes for every single one of those notifications? No wonder we're all failing to actually get anything done. And then how many times are you doing something not using your phone at all, but then because you get a notification and you end up picking up your phone, looking at the notification, next thing you know, you're scrolling. That's exactly what we want to avoid. So I'm telling you, notifications off. If people need to reach you, they're not going to comment on a picture of you to tell you that there is an emergency. They will text or call you. So there's really no reason to have all the other notifications on. My next tip is to create rules over just goals. A really good example for that would be to just put up a rule that there's absolutely no phone use when you're in bed. So if you put up that rule right away and you actually follow the rule, and this is the hardest part, I know, is to follow the rule, then that's when you're going to lead to using your phone less. And it also reduces decision fatigue, because if you have a rule put in place, then you know that there's really no having to make a decision of using your phone or not, because you have that clear rule that you are to not use your phone whenever you're in bed. A really strict rule that I have for myself is that I am to not use my phone whenever I'm around friends. So if I'm having a coffee date or even just like an evening with friends, like anything, my phone is put away in my purse. I can't even see it. It is gone. And there is a 2013 study that shows that the presence of a phone during a conversation reduces connection, empathy, and conversation quality. And that's not even, let's say you're having a conversation and actively scrolling on your phone. That can literally just be because the phone is on the table, like not even being used, just in sight. On site? Yeah. So yeah, one rule I have for myself is whenever I'm with friends or even family also, my phone is put away, out of sight, out of mind, which takes me to tip number 3, is you can make your phone harder to access. So like I said, I put in my bag, that way I don't even see it. That was something that I would do a lot when I was in college and studying. Even just having the phone out on a table, I would catch myself just kind of like grabbing it to look at it without even having anything to look at. Like it was just there and I would grab it and I'd be like, why am I even having my phone in my hands right now? So having it out of sight, just in a bag, is even better. And if we go back to having a rule where you don't want to use your phone in bed, you can have your phone charging in a different room or just on an outlet that doesn't necessarily reach your bed whenever it's charging. So just making everything to make it harder. Something that used to work really, really well for me was to use a physical alarm clock instead of using instead of using my phone to wake me up. So I used to have one of those sunrise alarm clocks, and oh my gosh, I loved that thing. Loved it so much. 100% would recommend. Not the $200 one though. I had like the $20 dupe from Amazon and it worked great. I just can't use it anymore because my partner and I wake up at completely different times. I like to wake up really early to go to the gym. And he doesn't. So no, I do have to use my phone as an alarm, and I need to find a solution for it because I can tell it's a problem. Your phone in your hand shouldn't be the first setting of your day. Like if you're genuinely trying to use your phone less throughout the day, there is no way that starting your day with your phone in your hand is going to help that. So make it harder to use your phone and try to find different things to use instead of your phone. Because yeah, like I said at the start, the problem is our phones can be used for everything. So if you can replace something instead of using your phone, then you're one step in the right direction. My fourth tip is to use tech against itself. Something very simple that you can do right now. And I talked about this a little bit at the start of the episode, but you can go in your settings right now and go into the screen time function and look at how much time you spend on your phone. Sometimes just having the awareness of how much time we actually spend looking at a screen is kind of going to give you that little click in your brain that this is something that needs fixing. I think we all have a project or something that we really want to work towards, whether it be studying, working on a side business, or just something that's really important to you, even just hobbies that you've been wanting to work towards, like painting or any sort of crafts, or even just spending time outside, anything that you keep going back to. I would really want to do this. I would really want to spend more time on this, but I don't have time. When you actually look at the amount of time that you spend scrolling on social media or just being on your phone, playing games, whatever, you will realize that that time, it's right there. The time that you say you don't have to do the things that you really want to do is probably spent on your phone instead. So sometimes just having that awareness is enough for you to decide to set rules for yourself and start prioritizing the things that you actually want to spend more time on. Another way to use tech against itself is to use app blockers. There are a lot of different options for app blockers. This is not sponsored, so I'm not even going to mention the one that I use, but if you want to know, you can DM me. I've used a few different ones. Some of them have like breathing exercises or math exercises just to access the app. And sometimes that is enough to just kind of like take a step back and be like, why am I opening Instagram right now? Like, do I even need to be on Instagram right now? Most of the time, no, you don't. It's just out of habit. And then there are other more extreme apps that just completely block the apps unless it's during like a certain time of the day. So I know for me, I have 15 minutes of social media every night, but that's it. Any other time, it's blocked. And 15 minutes is usually way more than enough for me to like go through some DMs that I have or just look at like posts that my close friends have posted and give it some love, some comments, likes, and all of that. But I really don't need more time than that on social media, I find. And whenever we talk about app blockers, I think there's always a few people that will be like, oh, but Instagram is how I connect with a lot of my friends, or like Reddit is how I DM a lot of my friends and all of that. And there are also DM only versions of apps. So I don't remember the exact name. I can link it below. Again, not sponsored, but there's an app that will basically just take all of your private message part of like social media apps and have the messages go through that app instead. So next time you get a DM, instead of going on Instagram, answering the DM, getting out of the DM page, and then finding yourself scrolling on Instagram for the next 30 minutes, that one app is only going to show private conversations so that you can answer DMs and then go on with your day. So if you have that excuse of Instagram is how I connect with certain people, it's how certain people connect with me, then there you go. There's a solution for you. Okay, so now we've reached a point in the episode where I have to be completely and utterly honest with you. If you were to listen to everything I've said in this episode so far, follow all the tips, and do everything right as I've explained it so far, you would probably still fail. And that's really because most of the time we'll be using our phone because we're bored, because there's nothing else to do, and because it's a default to just go and scroll on social media instead. And unfortunately, making your phone less interesting is often not enough. You need to make life outside of your phone more interesting. There are endless amount of research that show that people reduce screen time naturally whenever they engage in meaningful activities. So most of the time, if you're having a great time with your friends or family, you won't even think about using your phone because you're enjoying life the way that it is. I promise you that if you go on that screen time app and you look at when you used your phone the most or the least, the days that you spent the less amount of time on your phone are probably the days that you were the busiest or just overall the most engaged in what you were doing. I know for me, whenever I'm on vacation, I forget that my phone exists. So it's really not just about not using your phone. It's about finding things to do instead. It's about making your life outside of your phone more interesting than what you would be seeing if you were scrolling on social media right now. And I know it's easier said than done, but find out what are the things that you want to prioritize in your life and actually prioritize them. Find new hobbies or things that you want to try. There are so many hobbies that can be done completely away from screens. My default right now during the day, as the weather is getting better, spring is here, birds are chirping, I love going out on walks, getting some sunlight in and just enjoying the fresh air. And then at night, reading is a really good one. I have had the hardest time getting back into reading. I used to be that kid that would get in trouble in class because I was reading a book instead of listening to the teacher. And lately, I don't know why, I've just been having the toughest time going back into reading and finding books that I actually do enjoy. So something I would recommend is joining a book club and actually having people to discuss the book that you're reading with. You get extra motivation to actually go through the chapters that you're supposed to go through that week, and it can really be helpful for something to do at night whenever it's too dark to go out for a walk, but you're still wanting to do something outside of your phone. So again, make life outside of your phone more interesting than whatever is going on in your phone. And please keep in mind that whatever people are sharing on social media is a huge highlight reel of what their life is actually like. No one is only living the life that they show on social media. And finally, and this is my biggest tip that I'm going to give you today, let yourself be bored. Boredom is directly linked to creativity. If you feel yourself falling into a rut, if you feel like your life is being so repetitive, if you feel like you're not doing anything special or anything different on a day-to-day, being bored is probably the best thing you can do. And I know for me, it helps me a lot with the podcast actually, because the more time I spend being bored, the more time my brain kind of has to do its own thing and find its own ideas. And I find that the most time I spend outside of my phone or just sitting quietly without looking at anything during my daily commute has changed everything for me. Like seriously, I get my best ideas when everything is quiet and boring and I don't have anything to do. And I really, really encourage everybody to do this. And then, you know, there can be a whole other segment here about meditation and what it does for your brain. And I really, really do recommend looking into it. I am not to a point where I can get myself to meditate just yet, but I'm definitely trying to keep away from my phone, like I said, during my daily commute or whenever I'm waiting in line somewhere. I try to really just kind of sit with the boredom and let my brain do what my brain does best and give me great ideas for projects that I care a lot about. So I really think this is all I had for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to rate, review, download, follow, subscribe, whatever it is that you can do on the podcast platform you're currently listening to this episode on. It really means a lot to me to know that people are listening. I've received the sweetest DMs lately, and I just need you to know that I move to tears every time somebody tells me that they really enjoy the Glow Diner and that they relate to a lot of my experience or even just find value in listening. So that always means a lot to me. So I really hope that today's special hit the spot. And as always, this one's on me. Bye.